G'day Franzo risers, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Tour de Franzo. And as you've probably guessed, this is not a picture taken from a bicycle seat, but from an aeroplane to Adelaide. Well, let's go back to Kalgoorlie, land of gold, of sunshine, of pubs and stress tests. Did I say stress test? Yes, indeed I did. If you go back to episode 13, you'll hear the story of how I had my health scare and the doctor took me up to Kalgoorlie to check out that the old ticker was okay, and it turns out, yes, it was okay. It's just I don't have a 20-year-old body anymore. And so I thought it'd be wiser to hop the aeroplane over to Adelaide and do my journey east to west, go around the other way. So here's the story of how it all happened. It took 7 days for me to get the stress test done, but the good news was the guy that did the test declared me fit, and hey, it's been a long time since anybody said that to me. And so with that knowledge, I booked a flight and then packed up my bike and trailer all ready to go off to Adelaide. At Kalgoorlie Airport, not only was I swiped for drugs, but my luggage was also swiped for explosives. Maybe there's something shifty looking about me. So here's how I went. I set off from Kalgoorlie to Perth, and then from Perth across to Adelaide. Rain didn't dampen my enthusiasm for takeoff as we rose higher and higher up into the clouds, across to Perth, and then from Perth it was up above the clouds again, across to Adelaide, where I landed safely, all in one piece. I spent much longer in Adelaide than what I originally intended to, in fact about 3 weeks. Still, it was great to catch up with my brother Jürgen and my sisters Isis and Jutta and the nephews and so on and so forth, and it was also good to have a look at the old stomping ground. Unfortunately, I don't have footage to show you there because I was too busy having fun. But the other important job was to get my knee looked at because since leaving Albany, the knee had been giving me quite a lot of grief and it just seemed to be getting worse and worse. So scans revealed that there's arthritis in the knee, some damage to the meniscus, but physiotherapy helped to relieve a lot of that, and eventually it was time to head off to the southeast. The 6th of July was time for me to head off. Jürgen and Monica took me to Murray Bridge where we enjoyed a cup of coffee and a bit of food together, and then finally it was time for me to set off. I had never followed the western route of the River Murray, and as you can see the land was much flatter than what I had been used to so far on this trip. Flat didn't necessarily mean boring, it was just more enjoyable. And besides, I did have some interesting roadside art to look at. I mean, have a look at this letterbox, or what appeared to be an old car graveyard with some interesting artwork, the dragonfly or the scorpion. Happy robot. Or this happy lizard. After 36 hours for my first afternoon ride, I arrived in Wellington, a sight for sore legs. A place to get some good cheap accommodation, a bit of pub grub and a good night's sleep. A view of the lower end of the River Murray. Or here is a cheap thrill, a chance to cross the river the old-fashioned way by punt. At 49 kilometres for the day, Wellington Meningie was even flatter, but what the heck? There was a developing northerly tailwind, and that made it anything but boring. 46 kilometres later, I checked in at the motel at Meningie for the weekend, only to find disappointingly that the pub kitchen was closed for the weekend. There's nothing so boring, that place I will snub. I won't sit in the bar of the pub with no grub. So anyway, here is the progress of the journey from Adelaide so far. I set out from Murray Bridge and followed you'd say the west bank of the River Murray down to Jervois, where we saw that interesting artwork. And then it was down to Wellington, where I spent an overnighter and then crossed the ferry and then progressed further southwards down towards Meningie, where I spent that weekend. And then continuing on further, well, it was down the Coorong, stopping at Policeman's Point, then Tilly Swamp, and eventually Kingston itself. So it was on the road again. Flat? Well, not always, because there were enough changes to keep the route interesting. The weather was cool, but at least it was dry, and I began to see my first glimpses of the waters of the Coorong. Yeah, it was flat. The owner of the former motel at Policeman's Point kindly allowed me to pitch my tarp and sleep out on the back lawn overnight. And then, once again, it was back on the road. And yes, it was still flat, but now I could see more of the Coorong as it stretched its way down the southeast coast of South Australia. I pushed myself to get into Salt Creek. Here it is. As I came in, I saw this picnic bench and shelter and the coffee van. I thought, well, nice cup of coffee and a sit down would be quite welcome, because it turned out to be closed for the winter. Oh well. A small detour to look at Chinaman's Well. This is the well, or what's left of it. Then on we go, where it wasn't quite so flat anymore. And then Tilly Swamp. I had my coldest night yet. Yes, this is not water on my gear, it's ice. I actually had a 0-degree night. Then that was the end of the Coorong. Now the road was flatter once again, and there was riding past these long lines of sand dunes down towards Kingston. Here he is, folks, Larry the Lobster. And here is my lovely caravan park, where I made it to Kingston. I managed to sit out some crummy weather for a couple of nights, and yet I enjoyed some lovely pub grub. But then it came time to go and turn inwards to Lucendale and then on to Naracoorte. So Friday the 12th I turned inland from Kingston and worked my way across Lucendale, where I spent overnight before pushing on to Naracoorte. As I turned inland, the road continued flat, but with the friendly tailwinds I was not about to complain. And here is the remains of a spot on the map called Avenue. "58 kilometres later, my personal best for this entire trip, I managed to make it into Lucendale, where I checked into the caravan park at the Oval, and for the price of $15 for an unpowered site, I wound up being allowed to sleep in the office, and the caretaker stoked up a fire for me, and I enjoyed a beautiful pub mill with another couple that I've met who interestingly came from my first parish in Minya. And blow me down, the lady turned out to have been born in Ardrossan, same town as I was born, so boy did we have a good chat. Now, the 13th of July. It was another cold start to the day's trip, but I was tanked up on a nice hot pasty with sauce and a cappuccino. And then as I was riding, the caretaker from the caravan park rang to see that I was okay. Very nice of her. As I got closer to naracoorte, the land changed. There were a lot more trees and, of course, a lot more hills. For the first time on my trip, I seriously got rained on, but the plus side of that was it only served to bring out the scent of all those trees. It was about 287 kilometres since I left Murray Bridge, but here I was in naracoorte. And so here we are in naracoorte. And Franzo, that's where I'll leave it at this point. So don't forget to click, like, and subscribe. And if you would like to help in the production of these videos, there is the link in the description below so that you can contribute via GoFundMe. So far, I have done well in avoiding the worst of the winter weather, and it has been cold and wet. It's just I've been able to avoid it very much by pulling into a caravan park, and your contributions to the Shout Me a Beer will go towards that. So thank you for watching, and thank you for your support and interest. Bye.